Hello and welcome to another video. Today it's time for my April reading wrap up. I had a surprisingly good month in April. I feel like I kind of came out of my slump a little bit. It was a bit slow going, but I got there. I read 17 books and I also DNF'd a book. If you watch my vlogs, you will know I DNF'd Infinity Reaper by Adam Silvera. It was just more of the same of the first book. Didn't like the characters. I didn't feel connected to any of the characters. I just felt the plot was far too predictable and I wasn't enjoying it. And it was really hard to follow the different POVs because I just couldn't tell them apart. And I didn't want to keep having to flick back to the beginning of the chapter to remind myself whose point of view it was, because, you know, I should have been able to tell from the writing which character it was. So I DNF'd that, so that's fine, that's done, that's out of the way. I read a total of 5,996 pages and I'm very happy with that because that's a pretty good total. That does include the 107 pages of Infinity Reaper I read though, because I wasn't missing that off my total. But I had a really mixed month actually, like rating wise. I had a few 2 stars and a few like low 3 stars, but that's fine. These things happen. I can't love every book I read. I'm also getting really sick of my hair. There we go, my hair shouldn't annoy me now. So I'm just gonna get stuck in and go through each book. So the first book was Wonderscape by Jennifer Bell. This got a 4-star. I absolutely adored this. It had massive Jumanji vibes, which I am here for. So on the very first page, the first line of the book is, "It was early morning and Arthur was already running late for school when the gnomes exploded." Like, I was already hooked by that very first line. So 3 kids who go to school together and know of each other, but they're not like friends or anything. They get accidentally sucked into this VR game. So they get sucked into this, but it turns out this is actually in the year 2473. So they're like almost 500 years into the future, and they have a time limit to get back to present day, and they basically meet these historical figures along the way. They uncover secrets about Wonderscape, this futuristic game that people play in 2473. They uncover secrets about it and they basically have to, they're on the run basically, and they need to make sure no one finds out that they're from like the early 2000s. But this is such a fun read. I really enjoyed it and I would definitely recommend it if you're into books that involve games and stuff, and if you like Jumanji you will like this. The next book I read was Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust. So this was a 3-star. However, I wasn't a massive fan of this. I was really looking forward to reading this. I heard lots of good things about it. It just fell a little flat for me. I had no, like, I didn't care about any of the characters really. I was literally here for the sapphic relationship and that was it. It was like a nice like slow burn. It wasn't rushed, but it wasn't too slow burn. And I really liked the relationship. However, I was a bit disappointed in the lack of world building. So this is apparently based on Persian mythology. I don't know anything about Persian mythology, so I was excited to read this and get a bit of an insight into Persian mythology. And I still feel, I've come out of this book and I still feel like I know nothing about it. And the only other real aspect I cared about was the Divs and the Paliks, which are the creatures, the demons. I mean, I don't know if they're actually demons. See, this is what I mean. I don't know. But I wanted more on them and we didn't get that. There was like very little world building and it just didn't hit the mark for me, unfortunately. Which is such a shame because I was really hyped for this and it just disappointed me quite a bit. But then next up I read The House at the Edge of Magic by Amy Sparks and really enjoyed this. This was a 4-star. Obviously this is a middle grade. We have 9 and she finds this little, well, she's a pickpocket and she comes across this little like trinket of this little house. Turns out the house is like turns into this massive full-size house. She ends up having to like help the people that are stuck inside the house, and it's just a really fun book. It's very whimsical and I just really enjoyed it, and I loved the characters. They were so funny and so different. Absolutely loved them, and just that the little quirks, like the toilets move, they just get up and move around the house. It's part of the curse that's on the house, and it's just amazing, and I absolutely loved it. Next up we have One for Sorrow, the first book in the Magpie Society series by Zoe Sugg and Amy McCulloch. So I was a bit about reading this because although I love Amy McCulloch's other book that I've read, I DNF'd Zoe Sugg's Girl Online series in the first book. However, I think that was a ghostwriter, so I thought I'd, you know, and it was a while back, so I thought I'd give it the benefit of the doubt. Got this in a book box, gave it a go, and oh my god, this was so good. So this also got 4 stars. I really enjoyed the mystery behind this and the adventure. Like, when I say adventure, they didn't really go anywhere, but there was the adventure of them trying to solve this mystery of this like girl who turned up on the beach dead like the year before, and them finding out more, and then the ending of this, it's been left on a cliffhanger, and I need the second book. I'm so excited for the second book, and I'm so happy that this did not disappoint because I really wanted to love this, and I did. So yeah, I mean, it was a bit predictable at some points, but you know, not to the extent that it like diminished my feelings for the book. Next up we had my reread of Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare, and this will come to no shock, but this was 5 stars. Absolutely love this. This follows Emma Carstairs and the Blackthorn clan, and I love this book. This is the book that has one of my all-time favourite lines from a book ever, and that is, if my heart was a canvas, every square inch would be painted over with you. And it's just one of my favourite lines ever. I absolutely adore that line, and I absolutely adore Julian Blackthorn. I absolutely adore Tyre and Livy Blackthorn and Mark Blackthorn, and Kit Herondale comes into this book and I'm here for it. But you don't really see much of Kit in this book, but it's fine because he's in Lord of Shadows more, and I'm reading that this month, so it's fine. It's fine. But 5 star, can't really talk about it much because I will end up just spoiling the entire thing, but I love this book. It is my least favourite of this trilogy, but I still love it. Next up we had Sabriel by Garth Nix. This was actually a reread for me. I read this book about 2 years ago and apparently didn't take any of the book in the first time I read it because I remembered nothing whilst reading this, but I really enjoyed my reread, and I feel like it's definitely stuck with me a lot more this time, and I'm very excited to move on to the sequels. If you watch my haul, you will see that I have the next 2 books in the series. The haul is not out yet. The haul you will see on Saturday, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. We have necromancy, we have like demons. Do you want anything else? No. That is what I love, and that is what this book delivered. Next up we have Love is for Losers, which is by Vibke Brueggemann. If I've pronounced that wrong, I apologise. I did pronounce it differently in my TBR video for this, and my friend who'd say the actual pronunciation that she thinks it is, so I'm going to go on that. But if there are... If there is another way to pronounce this, please let me know, because I don't want to be saying it wrong, but I believe it's Vibke and not Wibke. But it was Love is for Losers. And this book got 3 stars. I surprisingly loved this. So I sort of went into this not thinking I would love it, because I had heard a lot of people that are like my age or a little bit older say that yes, we know it is a YA, so we know it's going to be for a younger audience. However, it did read a lot more younger than it was, and I do see that. However, I sort of went into it in the mind of 15-year-old Becca, and I absolutely loved it. It was so cringy, but as looking back on it as how I was when I was like 15 going on 16, I can relate, and I adored this because knowing that, I know that this is going to be amazing for the actual target audience. It's going to be so relatable to them, and I want that age group to read it. It's a really fun read. It was so funny. There is a bit of a moment with like a bit of a heart-wrenching moment. There's actually a couple of those. I will say, I absolutely hate the main character's mother. I think she's a terrible mum, and she's selfish, and I wish that her godmother, the main character's godmother, who's the one that looks after her when her mum's off doing what she does, I wish she was the mum, because she was brilliant and I absolutely adored her. But loved this book, loved the characters in it. It's also got a hint of a female-female romance. The main character like discovering or sort of realizing that she likes girls, having to deal with her best friend who's just got a boyfriend and is like all about the boyfriend, which again, relatable at that age. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would, and I'm really glad. Next up, we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and this is going to be one of the most unpopular opinions you're probably ever going to hear on my channel, because every single person I know that's read this absolutely loves it and loves the entire of the Elderling world. But I gave it 2 stars and I'm not continuing the series. I didn't enjoy this. I really thought I would. It's literally up my street completely, but I didn't care for it at all. So it starts off where Fitz is abandoned, and everyone's just so nasty to him growing up. And obviously this book basically follows his childhood into teen years, and I thought as he got older I would enjoy it more, but it just still wasn't doing it for me. There was like 20 something chapters in this book, and chapter 17 is the only chapter that had me gripped. I was like, oh, this is getting interesting. And then chapter 18 just brought it back down again, and I was bored again. Like, I was bored. And if it wasn't for the fact I was buddy reading this with Jazz and Kelly, I would have DNF'd it. But I did want to push through to the end and see if it got better, because I was really holding out the hope that it would get better. And even at the very end, when all the action's happening and everything is going down, I was still bored and I just did not care for it. But I'm not going to dwell on it. It's done. I've read it. I don't like it. I'm not continuing the series. That's it. I'm not going to mention it again. Probably will, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm going to like leave it there. If you love it, I'm sorry. And I would recommend giving it a go because everyone else loves it. It's just me that apparently doesn't. Next up, we have The Ask and the Answer by Patrick Ness. This is the second book in the Chaos Walk-In series, and it's 5-star. This was the first 5-star, not including my reread of Lady Midnight. This was my first 5-star of April. I'm not counting Lady Midnight because it was a reread. This was just absolutely incredible. So it follows off essentially from where book 1 ends. And it's just, I can't even say anything about it because it's the second book. I can't, but like a lot happens in this and you just don't know who to trust. The person who you hate in the first book, you end up loving in this book, and stuff happens, and I cried at this book, at something I never thought I would cry at. So this book got me, and I loved it, and I cannot wait to finish the trilogy. And then the next book was the other 5-star of the month, and it was Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. This book, man, I again can't really tell you much about it because it's the second book, but it again kind of like follows on from the end of the first book sort of straight away, and the main characters get separated, like they have to go their separate ways for a little bit in this one, and do their own thing, but then they come back together. But basically the ending broke me, and I've still not forgiven Shelby Mahurin for this. And I'm also regretting reading it because the third book isn't out yet, and I want the third book now. I need to know how this is gonna go now, especially after that ending. So much happened at the end of this book that I was like, huh, what? But yeah, absolutely love this. And this ended up being my favourite book of the month. It was between this and The Ask and the Answer. However, I did say in one of my vlogs, the reason this got the top spot for favourite book of the month was because after finishing both of these, I was like, oh my god, I need the third book now. And I do have the third book for the Chaos Walking trilogy, but I didn't pick it up. However, if I did have the third book for this, I would have picked it up. I would have like screwed my TBR and just read this. So this is my favourite one of the month. Next up, we have Fade Out by Rachel Caine, which is the seventh book in the Morganville Vampire series. Obviously, I have been buddy reading these with my mum and my sister. This book is getting close to, I think, my favourite book of the series. I think, if I can remember rightly, book 8 was my favourite. I could be wrong on that, but this is a very, very high up with my favourites. I really enjoyed this. Merlin continues to be an incredible character. I don't think there's any of the books that I don't love Merlin in. He's my favourite character, other than Shane. But Shane's my favourite character for a different reason, so we're not going to talk about that. But this got 4 stars. We are very gradually getting to the point in the series where I'm going to stop enjoying them as much before it picks up at the end. There is a bit of a lull in the series, but I found out that that's actually some people's favourite part of the series, so I don't know, but we'll see when I get to it again. But yeah, 4 stars. Can't really say much else about it other than I love Claire and Shane so much. Next up was just a little one to just add on to my TBR, and that was The Moomins and the Great Flood by Tove Jansson. This is the first book in the Moomin series. The second book is on my Eurovision-a-thon TBR, so I thought I would squeeze this in before Eurovision-a-thon started. This was a 3-star. It was just cute. There was like, it was literally just Moomin Mama and Moomin Troll on an adventure to try and find Moomin Papa. And it was just so lovely. There are illustrations. The illustrations are amazing. They make some friends along the way. And it was just so wholesome. And I can't wait to read the rest of the books. After all these years, I'm reading the Moomin books. Next up, we have A Girl in Exile by Ismail Kadari. This was a 2-star. I didn't like this. I ended up skim reading most of this because I just was not interested, but I didn't want to DNF the first book of Eurovision-a-thon. But I just did not like this. It had such an interesting concept of this girl was found dead with a copy of an author's, like a signed and personalised copy of an author's book, and this is told from the author characters, not this author, but the author of the book the girl's found with, that person's point of view. Because obviously he's part of the investigation. He's questioned because, you know, this girl's found with this book. And I just didn't like it. I did not like the main character. In the first chapter, he's an abusive piece of trash to his girlfriend, and that automatically put me in a bad mood, and I feel like that just carried through with the rest of the book because he just continued to be a terrible person, and I kept trying to make everything about him. You know, a girl had died and he was making it about him and his play that he was trying to get like approved, and I wasn't here for it and I didn't enjoy it. So glad it's a library book and I can take it back. Next up we have The Polar Bear Explorers Club by Alex Bell. This one I did like. This was a 4-star. I really enjoyed this. I loved how Stella was just like, screw the system. I don't care if I'm a girl. I want to go on this expedition with my dad. And Felix, her dad, was just amazing. Like, in a world where all the men were like, girls can't do this, girls can't do that, and where the women are like, girls shouldn't be doing this, girls should be just making themselves acceptable for marriage, and like, I hate that. But Felix was just like, no, Stella, you're coming with me on this expedition. And I loved it. And I love the friendship group that's formed in this one. It's just such a lovely like friendship group. I loved Beanie, I loved Shay, and I even started to love Ethan by the end of the book. However, I will like, hopefully Ethan is more prominent, like becomes even better in the other books in this trilogy, but I will definitely be continuing this series. I really enjoyed this. Next up we have Death at Intervals by Jose Saramago. This is translated from Portuguese and this got a 3 stars, partly because of how it's written. And when I say that, I mean there is like, I'm gonna find an example. Right, so there's like 1 paragraph break in 2 pages and 2 pages with no paragraph breaks. There's very little punctuation. There are absolutely no speech marks whatsoever. So when people are talking, it's so difficult to keep up. And I don't know if that's how it was originally written or if that's just how it's been translated. But either way, it was a really hard one to get through in that sense. But in the story sense, it was very interesting and very thought-provoking. It's basically death stops, but only in this one country, which that's the bit I didn't get. But death just stops and there is like 7 full months of no one dying. And it's not a case of no one can get ill or no one can be injured. It's a case of if you get ill or you get injured and you would usually die, you're just stuck in this like limbo. And it's horrible. Like, that's a horrible thought. And it just really makes you think, and like the families of those people, like terminally ill people and things like that, like the lengths they have to go to stop their family members suffering. It's really heart-wrenching. But then you've also got the political and religious side of it as well, which I don't usually care about religious side of things, but this was quite interesting. And the political side and the financial side, because if you think about it, if no one's dying, life insurance companies, what are they for? Like, and they had basically 7 months of no one dying in this country, and they had to adapt because they didn't know how long this was going to go on for. Like, it could have gone on forever. And it was basically just them having to adapt to this. And then when death did start back up and was like, gave the reasons for why death did this, it was really interesting and I absolutely loved the concept. The ending got a bit weird and I wasn't really sure about the ending, but like the book in general was quite interesting and I'm really glad I read it. It's way out of my comfort zone and I'm glad I gave it a go. Next up we have The Secret Cove in Croatia by Julie Kaplan. Again, completely out of my comfort zone. I never read contemporary romance, but this was actually pretty good and I now want to read other books by this author who is like a contemporary romance author. Like, all of her books are contemporary romance, but I want to read them. I really enjoyed this. I was worried for a bit that there would be a cheating trope. I'm very much against any book with a cheating trope, especially if it's romanticized. So from the way this was going, it looked like the two main characters, Maddie and Nick, were going to end up together a lot sooner than they did. Nick's girlfriend was horrible, but no matter how horrible a character is, no one deserves to be cheated on. And I was very worried for a second, quite a few seconds, that this was going to be a cheating trope and it was going to be like, oh, Nick and Maddie are going to get together whilst he is still with Tara. That wasn't the case. This is a spoiler, but that wasn't the case. I'm not going to say anything else than that about how it went, but it was fine. It was a relief, because if it had have turned out that way, probably would have DNF'd it, but I didn't have to, and I'm happy because I really enjoyed this book. It was so good. And yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, that I want to read more contemporary romance by this author. And then the final book I read in April was Dangerous Remedy by Kat Dunn. This was a 4-star for me. A fairly low 4-star though, which I'm shocked about, because before starting this I genuinely did think it was going to be more of a 4-5 star, but it was more of a 3-4 star. I did really enjoy this, and I am going to be getting the sequel because of the way it ended. I need to know what happens. I really like how the ending set it up for a sequel, because it could have just ended. Obviously the ending would have had to be slightly different, but it could have ended slightly differently. But it didn't, and I'm here for it. I loved the Battalion of the Dead. They are the group. It's a found family. Love a found family. And I just really liked... I didn't like the fact that there was like the whole miscommunication trope. Like if the characters had actually like opened up and talked to each other more and not kept secrets, things wouldn't have gone awry as much as they did. But you know, these things happen, and it happened. I would have liked a little bit more atmosphere in this. Atmosphere scored quite low on this on CawPile, just because I felt like I didn't feel like there was the atmosphere. There was the intrigue and there was like the logic and everything and the enjoyment, but something about the atmosphere, it was just lacking. I'm hoping the second book brings that up, but it was a 4-star. I did enjoy it. I am going to be continuing this. I think it's a duology, so you know, I can't really complain. So that was all of the books I read in April. I'm really happy with my progress in April. I made a pretty good dent into my Eurovision-a-thon TBR. I read 5 books for it, which means I've only got 34 to read. I know that there is no way I'm going to read the rest of those before the 22nd of May, but I'm going to give it a good go, and I'm going to try and prioritise loads of the little ones first, because a lot of the bigger ones are reads that I think I'm going to just get sucked into, so hopefully they won't take too long, even though they are bigger, but they're books that were already on my shelves that I wanted to read, so hopefully that helps. But we'll see. You'll find that out in a month's time. But I hope you enjoyed this. If you've read any of these books and you also liked them or didn't like them, let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next time. Bye.